As members of the Global Farmer Network,
we believe agriculture is part of the solution,
not part of the problem.
We are committed to developing agricultural leaders
and sharing their stories across the globe.
We have one purpose:
to amplify the farmer's voice.
My voice.
Mi voz.
La mia voce.
My voice.
Welcome to Global Farmer Voices, a podcast by the Global Farmer Network where we invite farmers from around the world to share their stories and perspectives. Hello, I'm Delaney Howell, host of this podcast series, and we're thrilled to continue the celebration of our 25th anniversary, a milestone year for the Global Farmer Network. Each month, we continue to highlight some great themes, showcasing how our members have shown up over the last 25 years. This August, we're celebrating 25 years of lifting agriculture as a career of choice. Today, we're in the UK with James Mill, a young farmer who started in politics before finding his way back home to the family farm. James grew up outside York in northern England. Arable crops, sheep, and a diversified wedding venue keep the business resilient.
So I'm James Mills. I'm 37. I'm married to Fiona, my wife. We have one little boy, William, who's 2, another one that's due imminently, and then I farm in partnership with my mum and dad just outside York. So we're in the north of England. We farm around sort of 500 acres, 200 hectares, depending on your metrics. Primarily arable, so we're producing wheat, malting barley, beans and oats, but we also have sheep as well that are integrated within the arable side as a business. And then we diversified probably 5 years ago now, and we have a wedding venue on farm. So we do roughly sort of 30 weddings a year. I've got one setting up just out the corner of my eye as we speak. So the two businesses run separately, both have to be profitable in their own right. There's a view in the UK political circles that we should be diversifying to prop up food production, and that is a long way from what we want to do. In terms of what it was like growing up on farm, there's a broad-ranging question, but I think we'll probably come on to sort of wider career later on, and perhaps my upbringing kind of explained why I didn't immediately want to rush back to farm.
James didn't rush back to farming. He built a policy career in London and then Brussels first. But the moment he chose to return is burned in his memory.
I went off to university and did politics and history at Nottingham's. Not going to university didn't ever seem like an option, to be honest. I'm only the second person in our family to have done it, so it kind of feels strange that I just took it for granted. Of course I'll go to university. So I did that and met some of the best people I think I could ever have hoped to have done. And if for no other reason than meeting those folks who are now the best friends I will probably ever have, and it was worthwhile doing. But by chance, I also met a future employer. As per all university students sometimes do, I was sat feeling a little worse for wear while having breakfast one morning and got chatting to a bloke on the same table, and it turned out he was running as a member of parliament in the 2010 general election, and he was in the process of setting up a campaign team.
After following a variety of roles, including a stint at the National Farmers Union in the UK and the British Agriculture Bureau in Brussels, there was an announcement that the Brexit referendum was going to take place. James immediately started having discussions with his father about coming back to the family farm. His father didn't immediately take to the idea, but James continued to reiterate the farm and agriculture was where he wanted to be. He missed being around family and the lifestyle he had grown up in. Nearly a decade later, James can still remember such a pivotal moment in his life, walking back up the driveway after the first time back on the farm, knowing he was coming home.
I think it was 8 months before the Brexit vote happened, I landed back at home, and I can remember walking up the drive to the farm on my first morning working for myself, and it feels like it was yesterday, and it was the best thing I've ever done. So I'm not sure I'd say I wish I'd done it sooner, because actually I think that there've been times over the last sort of decade where if I had come home sooner, I wouldn't have had the sort of ability mentally to take a step back and say, it's all right, it's just a bad day. Like, chill out. You don't need to throw it all in the bin and go and start again somewhere else. And I think that's quite important, that there's a beauty in working for yourself, in that everything that is a success is yours because you've achieved it. But equally, if it all goes wrong, and there's only one person to blame, and he's sat looking back at me now, and that is quite a hard thing to rationalise. And I don't think I'd have been mature enough to have managed that when I was any younger. In terms of how I felt, excited. I'll be completely frank, I probably didn't know what I was letting myself in for. I've got a number of confidants within sort of farming circles in the UK who I'd mulled it over with for years, quite frankly. And they all warned me that I'd get back and I'd have no one to talk to, and I'd regret that. So there was a bit of apprehension, but the sun was shining, and I live in the best place in the world. So I walked up the drive thinking, yeah, this is pretty decent, isn't it? It's better than my commute with a croissant in Brussels.
That feeling, purpose meeting place, is why agriculture still pulls people back. It's not just a job, it's a life you can step into and shape. But policy turned personal, and James felt his world turn upside down once again, as his two worlds collided. A sudden inheritance estate tax proposal threatened small farms across the UK.
October 2024, our Chancellor stood up in front of the House of Commons and declared that they were going to introduce something called inheritance tax, a rate of 20% on farm businesses. Prior to that, there'd been exemptions for about the last 60 years. So businesses the country over, this isn't just England, this is Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales as well. Businesses were suddenly faced at the prospect of someone dying, having a 20% tax, that the owner of the business might be 80, and they'd planned their whole life on not having to pay anything because there's been an exemption, and then bam, all of a sudden they've got a 20% tax on the value of their farm. I can't speak for farms around the rest of the world, but within the UK there is not sufficient cash within businesses to pay 20% tax on an asset that has appreciated hugely, not because of the returns that you can make from it, but because of the pressures on land use from solar panels, from house building, from pensions investing in land. All these things have driven up land prices, and it would mean that if you were unfortunate enough not to know when you were going to die, your next of kin were left with a 20% tax bill. I don't think that's right. To have dropped it on someone with no opportunity to plan, it will potentially rip the heart out of businesses across the UK, and it will encourage consolidation, of which we haven't seen in the UK for hundreds of years, and arguably will result in corporations owning land that can't be taxed because they will never die, whereas families and businesses that have been on the land for multiple generations will face that tax if they're unfortunate, and that seems principally unfair.
Although having worked in politics for a number of years, James had never considered himself someone to stand up and be involved in that way. But he felt strongly about protecting his farm and farms for other generations yet to come.
So why did I do it? It's not my natural inclination. I am not a Tiananmen Square, sit down in front of a tank and sort of protest sort of a guy. I would rather get round the table, talk and debate and present solutions, but the government had no interest in doing that. And therefore, there was a weight of feeling within farmers in the UK that something had to be done. They wanted to show their emotion and show, despite government telling us it was only going to be a tiny proportion of people that were impacted, that actually thousands upon thousands of people would be impacted. And therefore myself and 3 other people decided that on the 11th of November 2024, we'd organise a march in London and round up a few mates to go to Westminster, and that's what we did. I am not someone that normally likes being in front of camera, and I don't do social media much to the GFN's disgust, because they would like me to promote more on Twitter and various other platforms, but it makes me too cross, so I have to arm's length it. But fortunately, I have a couple of friends with quite big YouTube followings that speak to farmers on a daily basis via their videos. So between us, I'm good at organising, they're good at talking to camera, and as a quartet, it worked pretty well. So we took between 30 and 40,000 farmers, all clad in mottled green, down to Westminster.
And what happened next surprised even the police.
And we stood outside number 10 Downing Street with Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament in the background, and we tried to make our feelings known. I'll be completely frank, I have never felt prouder of farmers in all my life. I used to walk up and down Whitehall dressed in it either used to be a grey or a blue suit. Everyone would look exactly the same as you're wandering up and down. And I got to Whitehall at about 5:30 in the morning, and it was sleet and raining and horrible. And I met the Gold Command from the Metropolitan Police, who helped me put some barriers where we wanted. And we got a flatbed lorry, and we parked it across 4 lanes of traffic. Every taxi driver that was held up for the day was blowing his horn, not in anger, but in I don't like to use the word solidarity because it has various different tendencies, but in support. And slowly but surely, from about 6 o'clock in the morning, I saw placards and wellies and green mottled weathered coats and faces that looked like they'd been outside for the last 40 years arrive. And I stood on stage and had to ask people to move back because we were worried someone was going to get hurt, and there was nowhere for them to go because they just filled Whitehall. The police thought we might get 10,000 people, and we got 3 or 4 times it. Just 4 random lads that have access to YouTube.
Did the UK listen? Did you feel like your voices were heard?
There were more press than you could shake a stick at. There were helicopters in the sky taking aerial pictures. The UK listened. I think the people listened, and I think if you talk to the average Joe on the street, I think they listened. But there were 2 fairly important people that, touch wood, haven't listened, and the Chancellor is one, and our Prime Minister is the other. And the 4 of us that organised it have talked about it since, that it was an abject failure then because nothing's changed. But it wasn't. Much like if you only measure success as a farmer by how much money you make, some years you might think you're pretty blooming useless, but there are things outside of your control. But what it did, I hope, is that if there was one person in that group of 40,000 that looked left and looked right and thought, I'm not the only person that's feeling like this, and I'm not the only person that feels helpless and that they're sort of on their own, then maybe it was worth doing. If for no other reason than we got a picture of about 50 children under the age of 5 pedalling ride-on tractors around. There's a roundabout outside of Big Ben. Then it was worth doing because no one's ever done that before, I don't think. British farmers don't protest. It's as simple as that. We look at the French and we look at the Belgians and even the Germans to an extent, and they like getting their slurry tankers out and causing mayhem. Ironically, in the first couple of weeks of me living in Brussels, the whole centre of Brussels was shut because the French came to town, and tractors just pile on in and close the place, and there's manure and fire and straw, and we didn't want that, the nobility and the principled nature of farmers. We didn't want that to happen. But to see British farmers do it and stand there peacefully and leave the place immaculate. We asked everyone to take home a piece of litter, and the Gold Command Met officer who'd been with me all day said, I've never seen this place look so clean after a protest. But we have climate protests, we have Gaza protests, we have all the protests you can imagine, but the place was spotless.
But for James, it wasn't the thousands of farmers that banded together that had the most impact on him. It was one man he met following the end of the protests who had the most profound impact on him.
There are so many allied industries, from agronomists to machinery dealers, all sorts of other things. And there was one person that day that stayed behind and helped me sweep at the end. We'd had little straw bales around the stage to keep people safe. And we wanted to sweep the street and sweep the straw up in order to leave it looking right. And this guy came and grabbed the brush off me and said, can I help? And he was Northumberland accent, which is the only place about further north in England than where I am. I said, of course you can, mate. Yeah, get stuck in. We got chatting while he was doing it, and I said, so why are you here? Like, what's the deal? And he said, well, I'm not a farmer. I'm an electrician. I was like, do you just fancy a day out? What was the... And he said, well, no, all my customers are farmers. And if this rips the heart out of the industry, where do I go? There isn't another industry in Northumberland other than agriculture. Our community is like no other, and for some reasons that's amazing. For other reasons it is not ideal. We're pretty good at killing people in the UK on farms, and that we have to sort. But for a man who's an electrician from Northumberland to recognise the soul and the community that he works within, in my mind, shows way above and beyond pounds and pence why our industry is as good as it is.
Through it all, James has kept the next generation front and center. He even recorded this interview with me just hours before baby number 2 arrived.
Happy and healthy, simple as that. William came with me this morning. So my wife was due to give birth yesterday, and we think it is probably going to happen not long after this call. So she came with me this morning because we were thinking that nothing was moving. So we went in the gator, and I rounded up some sheep on some of the bumpiest ground we have with her and William, for want of a better phrase, to get things jiggling. And he loved it. And he comes, and he wasn't in nursery today, he does nursery 2 days a week, and he just loves being outside. And he may not want to be a farmer. And much like mum and dad, I won't ever short-arm him into farming. If he wants to do it, I hope I can give him the opportunity. I just want him to be happy and have fun. There's plenty of time to worry about what he wants to do in future, and the same for whatever's on the way.
What a powerful story. James Mills reminds us that the route back to agriculture isn't always straight. He left the farm for politics, cutting his teeth in Parliament, at the NFU, and in Brussels before choosing to come home. He still remembers that first morning, walking up the driveway, sun on the yard, realizing he was exactly where he was meant to be. When policy threatened the family business with a harsh estate tax, he returned to those same halls, this time to be heard. 40,000 wellies lining Whitehall, peaceful, tidy, but determined. And today, just hours before welcoming his second child, he's thinking about legacy. Not forcing the next generation into farming, but fighting so they have the choice to step into it when it's their time. That's the heartbeat of this anniversary theme. Lift agriculture as a career of choice, so the next generation can choose it. It's clear that the past 25 years have created a lasting legacy of support, knowledge sharing, and unity within the Global Farmer Network. From the global roundtables that bring farmers together to the practical advice that transcends borders, the organization has made a profound impact, and we can't wait to see what the next 25 years will bring. If you're interested in learning more about the Global Farmer Network's mission and its members, seeing some of the things the organization is doing, and finding out how you can get involved, please visit globalfarmernetwork.org. And if you'd like to support the Global Farmer Network through a donation, you can do so at globalfarmernetwork.org/donate. If you enjoyed the podcast today, be sure to subscribe and follow the Global Farmer Network on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Delaney Howell, and this has been the Global Farmer Voices podcast.